Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Very Cold Lasagna. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, this show is your safe space for the most filthy casual takes on the world of pro wrestling and sports. I am your host, DylanLasagna. Welcome to episode number 108 of this freezing cold podcast that houses the icy yet spicy lasagna full of those filthy casual takes. Today, we're getting to that halfway point of our NFL 2022 season preview month, and we're going to be talking about the NFC East, or should I say, the NFC least, as a certain someone like to say, aka Skip Bayless, or the many other people that I like to call that division the trash dumpster fire that it is. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. That's the division that we're going to be previewing as we reach the halfway point of our 2022 NFL season preview month. Now, in case you missed any of the portions of our NFL season previews, go check out the YouTube channel or wherever you listen to Very Cold Lasagna, be it YouTube, Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, or Google Podcasts. And you can also check out the clips of each team on YouTube as well. So with that being said, we're going to continue with our team-by-team previews of the NFL season in 2022. And we're going to truck along with the four teams in the NFC East: the Dallas Cowboys, the Washington Commanders, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the New York Giants. And I gotta say, for as much NFC least there is in this division, there's also a lot of uncertainty that's going to be in this year, because honestly, there was kind of a lot of turnover in these four teams as we get into it. But who knows? It could still be the NFC least, but at the same time, maybe it could be very competitive. Maybe 2016 competitive. But it's anyone's game. It could be anyone's game for better or for worse for either one of these teams. So with that being said, let's get straight into our NFC East 2022 preview. We're going to start with the team that finished dead last in the NFC least in 2021, and that was the New York Football Giants. Or should we call them the New York Ants? Because that's what they felt like for the last 5 or 6 years. That's what they've been. New York Ants. Cockroaches. Little tiny bugs. Dumb little bugs in the land of the Big Apple. Because ever since, Tom Coughlin and that disaster that was Ben McAdoo, in all those years, the New York Giants have been pretty much nothing. They've been pretty much nothing. And that was pretty much the same old story in 2021. They actually had a decent shot at trying to vie for the NFC East, but they had a rash of injuries to the likes of Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones, Sterling Shepard on the offensive side, and on the defensive side, safety Jabril Peppers gets hurt, along with other countless injuries, and not to mention the fact even when everyone eventually got back throughout the season, they were very, very undisciplined on both sides of the ball. They were making a lot of penalties, especially notably in that game against the Kansas City Chiefs on the Monday night. So their head coach, Joe Judge, was not necessarily acting like, Judge Judy or any of that. So the Giants go 4-13 in 2021 as a result, and out goes the Judge, as well as Dave Gettleman, who both get fired. Well, technically, Dave Gettleman retired, but that's just to save face, because technically, in my eyes, he did get fired for the ineptitude and the mediocrity that he's produced throughout his time with the New York Giants. So, the Giants are out to look for a new head coach and a new general manager. But in an actually surprisingly decent move by ownership, they actually went out and got a proven offensive coordinator in Brian Daboll, who has worked with Josh Allen, one of the biggest up-and-coming quarterbacks in the NFL, and who was a strong MVP candidate, came this close to going to his first AFC Championship game last season. So they hire Brian Daboll, Josh Allen's former offensive coordinator, and then they hire as a general manager Joe Chosen, who was also instrumental in getting Josh Allen. He was technically assistant general manager, but he was also part of that front office that got Josh Allen to the Buffalo Bills. So both of those guys coming over from the Western New York side, going to New Jersey. So there's your new head coach. There's your new GM combo. So for the Giants, you get some proven commodities. You get at least a proven winning head coach and GM combo. But how does that translate to a pretty much a losing team for the better part of a half decade? So when you look at their offseason, when you see what they've done throughout their 2022 so far, they restructured contracts like Sterling Shepard, the wide receiver, the linebacker Blake Martinez, two kind of key parts of their team. They also restructured the contract of corner Adoree Jackson, and then from there they didn't really do too much. They added a quarterback in Tyrod Taylor from the Texans, who could be possible insurance in case Daniel Jones either gets hurt or he stinks up the joint. They also got a new center on the offensive line by the name of Joe Feliciano from the Bills. They also lost Evan Ingram to the Jacksonville Jaguars, their tight end, and they lost Jabril Peppers to the New England Patriots. So a key part of that defense is gone. So for the Giants, I guess they didn't really lose too much, but they also didn't really add much to help out their new head coach. But in the draft, that's where they really did their work, though, because they managed to get with their first round pick defensive end Kayvon Thibodeaux, who I actually did like when I did my filthy casual preview of that draft. From Oregon, he could get to the passer very well. He's big, athletic, raw talent, and he could be a good scheme. He could be a good fit in that Giants defense. They also got a tackle from Alabama in Evan O'Neal, who could be pretty solid, but we'll see how that offensive line forms out. A wide receiver from Kentucky by the name of Wandale Robinson. So overall, I mean, the Giants didn't necessarily have like a flashy offseason, but I mean, they didn't really have a really terrible one either. So the Giants have a lot of questions going into their 2022 season because the offensive line still remains a question marks with all the positions undecided. Even though they have their mainstay left tackle, Andrew Thomas, you still have your center, Joe Feliciano, and your guard, Mark Glowinski, and tackle Evan O'Neal. It's no certain guarantee that those three guys are going to be locks of maintaining those starting spots. And it's no guarantee that they can protect Daniel Jones against even the worst of pass rushes, let alone their own in training camp or like regular season practices. So we'll see what happens from there. Now, one of the bigger questions is is Daniel Jones going to benefit from having Brian Daboll as whether it's his play caller or his actual offensive coordinator? We'll see, because, well, look at the work that Daboll did with Josh Allen in his time with Buffalo. I mean, sure, Daniel Jones and Josh Allen, it's not a fair comparison, but we'll see how Daboll can at least try to make Daniel Jones be good enough, because Daniel Jones, I mean, he's not very terrible. He's not like total crap. I mean, he has some decent potential, but I don't think enough to be like a franchise starter. But Daniel Jones, maybe he can right the ship, but he's gonna have to limit those turnovers and all the bad qualities prior to Brian Daboll arriving on the scene. Now, another big question is, well, what do they do with Saquon Barkley? Like, there have been rumblings and speculation about whether or not they were going to trade Saquon throughout the offseason, or maybe like during the season, because, well, throughout his time with the Giants, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. I think it was 2020 where he had the ACL tear, and then 2021 he missed multiple games with I think it was the ankle injury. 2019 he also managed to miss a couple of games. So for Saquon, we didn't really have much of a full season, or at least most of a full season, except for his rookie year. So it's a little rough for Mr. Barkley down in the Big Apple. So I don't know if the Giants, maybe if some teams running back room is getting very dry, maybe they can get some draft capital for him, or maybe they just run it back with him for one more year, and see if he can prove his worth on the Giants and force New York to overpay for him and in free agency next year. So we'll see what happens in camp, because I do think the Giants could still be considering trading away Saquon Barkley, but I'm not sure. Now, I am interested in how Kayvon Thibodeau does on that defensive line, because, again, has some potential, but whether that results in anything positive or getting to the quarterback or maybe even putting out stout performances, that remains to be seen. So for the Giants in 2021, I mean, you don't really know what you're getting. They didn't really improve like that much, maybe on the offensive line, but we'll see how that translates to preseason action and regular season action. I do like some of the potential of Kayvon Thibodeau, but that remains to be seen. You also have question marks about how Daniel Jones is going to thrive in Brian Daboll's offense, and how whether or not Saquon Barkley is going to stay with the team or get traded. And you still have a decent receiving core: Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard. I forgot the name of the Lions receiver that they got a couple years in free agency 2 years ago. But for New York, I mean, I don't think they're gonna be too terrible unless they completely botch the whole thing. But maybe they could be third place the most in 2022. I'd say maybe they go double their win total, maybe 7-8 wins, being fair for the New York Giants. Because I think Daboll could be one of those head coaches that actually does moderately successful, but that all depends on what Daniel Jones can do, whether or not he can lead this offense, in spite of the flaws that are present currently for the New York Giants. Next team we're going to be looking at in this NFC East 2022 preview is the Washington, not the redacted, not the football team, but the Washington Commanders. They finally have a name that is meh. It's just there. It's so, I don't know. It's just kind of ish there. Like, what do y'all think about the Washington Commanders? Like, what exactly are they commanding? Like, they're commanding something. They're certainly commanding something, but it's not what you think it is. So anyway, for 2021, the Washington Commanders, or when they were known as the Washington Football Team, they were coming off a season where they just won the NFC East with a losing record of 7-9, and they were actually on the verge of an upset over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the eventual Super Bowl champions in Super Bowl 55. They actually managed to make them sweat in that NFC wildcard game at home against the eventual champions and Tom Brady, mind you, with a quarterback that has only had one start to his belt and was barely with the team for most of the season because he's just signed late in Taylor Heineke, and he managed to nearly beat the Tampa Bay Bucks in the playoffs. So they went into 2021, looking to try to get better, but unfortunately they could not, because they were just getting injuries all around. To Chase Young suffered a torn ACL. Antonio Gibson was not healthy all season long, even though he had some spurts in his second year. And then you trace it all the way back to week 1, when Ryan Fitzpatrick was the starter. They signed him in free agency, and then he gets injured in the second quarter, and he's gone for the rest of the season. So Taylor Heineke takes the reins for pretty much a full season of Washington football, and he was not terrible. He made a lot of erratic decisions, though, and he looked scared at times to throw the football. And so his play was pretty 50-50, and the secondary was kind of trash, to be honest with you, without a pass rush. So any momentum that the Washington football team had in 2020 even though they technically benefited from a pretty crappy division, and especially injury-riddled Dallas Cowboys. So the Washington football team, their season in 2021 was pretty derailed by all of that, and their hopes of repeating as NFC East champions went down the drain, going 7-10. So for Washington, they didn't command anything in 2021. So they renamed themselves as the Washington Commanders in 2022. Like I said, the name's pretty vanilla. So their goal for 2022 is going to be interesting for them, because right now they're in such an interesting spot. They need to have a winning record in 2022. Like, at this point, for me, like, sure, the ultimate goal is to make the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. But for the Washington Commanders, it's just, you gotta win something. You gotta win, like, games. You have to have a winning record. Like, whether you make the playoffs or not, you gotta win something. Like, look at the Las Vegas Raiders last year. They went through all that, like, controversy with John Gruden's emails being leaked and the Henry Ruggs situation, and they overcame all that adversity and made the playoffs. And sure, they lost to the first round to the Cincinnati Bengals, but to get to that point, to get through all that crap, it was kind of remarkable. It was really remarkable for the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, I'm not going to say that Daniel Snyder's, like, terribleness and his guidance will necessarily help the team get there. But, you know, Ron Rivera, the head coach, he has to put something together and at least have a winning record in 2022. So some of the things that they did in the offseason, they re-signed a couple of players. The two most notable ones being J.D. McKissick, who originally was supposed to go to Buffalo, but he changed his mind and decided to stay in the nation's capital. Don't know why he decided to do that, but it's your decision. And they actually got Terry McLaurin, their wide receiver, the number one receiver, to agree to a long-term extension. So that's one less thing to worry about for the Washington Commanders. They had some notable additions in free agency, notably on the offensive line. They added a guard by the name of Andrew Norwell from the Jacksonville Jaguars, guard Trey Turner from the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that offensive line that was kind of bad in 2021, get some additions in 2022 to hopefully protect their quarterback, whether it's Taylor Heineke or the guys that they traded a couple of mid-round picks for, and that is Carson Wentz. Yes, the Eagles, no, not the Eagles killer, the Washington killer back in 2017. Yes, that Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz coming off a pretty meh season with the Indianapolis Colts, gets traded to the Commanders and is back in the NFC East, this time with Washington. Oh, what a twist of fate this has become. So you lose Ryan Fitzpatrick to retirement, and, well, you already got Carson Wentz now. You lost Brandon Sheriff, one of your key guards in the offensive line, to the Jaguars, but that's why you signed guard Andrew Norwell. And this is not necessarily a loss, but I'm not sure why they're not doing it, is a key part of their secondary is getting Landon Collins, their free safety. He's still out there, unsigned. Maybe it's an injury history. I'm not sure. So in the draft, the Commanders' draft was, I mean, it's so-so. But I'm hearing decent things about wide receiver Jahan Dotson from Penn State. From, like, the reports I read, he seems like he's having good chemistry with Carson Wentz. And then you get a defensive tackle by the name of Fidarian Mathis from Alabama. So a key piece in that defensive front, led by Chase Young, and maybe ease some pressure off of Young as he continues to ease his way back in from the ACL tear. They also surprisingly added another quarterback in the name of Sam Howell from North Carolina. Don't know why. And most importantly, they added a guard. They added a guard from Tulsa. And his name is Chris Paul. Yes, the Phoenix Suns point guard who came from Tulsa. He went to Phoenix, went to Tulsa, and then made his way to the NFL to go play for the Washington Commanders. Chris Paul said, screw the NBA. I'm going to play on the offensive line, protecting Carson Wentz, beefing up so I can play for the Washington Commanders, America's greatest team ever. Yes, Chris Paul is in the NFL now. No, it's a completely different Chris Paul. So, yes, they drafted a guy similar to the name of the Chris Paul of the NBA. Did you know there's also a Matt Ryan that plays for the Boston Celtics in Summer League? I didn't know that either. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. So, for the Washington Commanders, I think the biggest takeaway of this season is that the fact that, well, they did command the offseason just for all the wrong reasons. Mainly because, well, of all the sexual harassment allegations against Dan Snyder that has been ongoing since 2018. And things just keep piling up for this team, man. It's Dan Snyder and his stupidity. It's getting insane. So more people are speaking out. Congress is getting involved. They're getting Roger Goodell to testify, and they're trying to get Dan Snyder to testify, and he refused until like recently he offered to appear via video to testify. I'm not sure if Congress accepted it as of like when this episode has been posted, but that's the situation where we're at with the Commanders. I'm not sure what exactly is going to be the end game for Daniel Snyder and this investigation, but it's very serious. These are very serious allegations. And who knows what's going to happen? Like, are the owners actually going to man up? Are the other owners in the NFL actually going to man up and remove him from, like, force him to sell the team? Because he's done a lot of shit. He's done a lot of shit that I personally cannot speak for, because I'm just a guy sitting here. There are plenty of other people more well-informed that can speak on this matter. But all I could say is that these are very serious allegations. And in my opinion, Daniel Snyder has to go. He absolutely has to go. So this could be very interesting a season for the Washington Commanders, because they could be commanding literally everything for the wrong reasons. Like all the headlines, all the news. And that could be a very big distraction for them. It could be a very big distraction for them. Especially when you're trying to get like Carson Wentz in a groove, because he's certainly in an interesting spot, because this can be his last chance to prove that he can be starting material with like a decent offensive line and a solid receiving core with Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, and now you got a healthy Antonio Gibson and Curtis Samuel now. So this has to be a season where Washington has to win these games. They have to go at least 9-8 or 10 and whatever. Otherwise, Ron Rivera could get fired. He could be a scapegoat. So looking at some of their key games in 2022, obviously it's the one where Carson Wentz plays his old team, Philadelphia, in week 3, and when they go to Philadelphia in week 10. Wow. Wow. That place is going to be rocking against Carson Wentz. Then you go to Dallas in week 4, and then in Indianapolis, yes, more Carson Wentz booing is going to commence in that game. And then week 9 against the Minnesota Vikings. So by that point, it's going to be like a chapter where do the Commanders stand, like in terms of how they're constructed, like what's their end game, what's their goal? Like, are they going to actually achieve that goal of we're gonna at least try to win some of these games in spite of what's going on, like inside that toxic culture. So we're gonna see what happens. But overall, like I said, all the Commanders are gonna be doing this season is probably commanding for the wrong reasons. But if they want to change that narrative in this coming fall, they gotta have a winning record. I know I've been saying it time and time again throughout this portion. They have to have a winning record, because if they don't, whether they miss the playoffs or not, someone is gonna get the axe. Someone's gonna be getting the axe, and it's certainly it's probably not gonna be Dan Snyder until he gets removed. It's going to be somebody else. So our third team that we're going to be talking about in our NFC East preview is none other than Fly, Eagles Fly, the Philadelphia Eagles. Will they be flying in 2022? Will they exceed expectations yet again? That remains to be seen. For 2021, honestly, people predicted, including myself, well, off camera at least, that this was going to be a season where it is going to be the start of maybe a rebuild around Nick Sirianni, the first-year head coach, and Jalen Hurts. But they suddenly performed better than expected, mainly because, well, they shifted midseason to a more run-based approach with Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, that three-headed running attack leading the charge. And then they made Jalen Hurts Lamar Jackson-esque, making him run the ball more than throwing it. And against the weakest of weak competition down the stretch, they literally had the easiest schedule remaining in the NFL. They can literally thank the NFL scheduling gods that they had the entirety of the NFC East in December. Literally almost the entirety of the NFC East. They secured the 7th seed in the NFC playoffs with their 9-8 record, being out the New Orleans Saints. But that was just the beginning, because what would happen in the playoffs when they actually faced competition in the form of Tom Brady, the Tampa Bay Bucks, and their vaunted defensive line, that play that they did in 2021 was not going to be allowed. It was literally a no-fly zone. It was literally a no-running zone in that playoff game against the Tampa Bay Bucks. The run-oriented offense, Jalen Hurts' erratic play, it cost them. It cost them that game. 30-15. Like that box score was literally inflated because of garbage time. But for most of the game, it was a total shutout for the Philadelphia Eagles. It was like a smashing of sorts. So for Philadelphia, they kind of responded in kind. They approached this offseason looking to bounce back from that horrific playoff performance, because they have to go into this season thinking that Jalen Hurts has to prove something. He has to prove that he can still be a cornerstone quarterback. And what I mean by cornerstone, he can be a key quarterback in this league, but he just has a little more to prove until he can be that franchise guy that stays there for the entirety of his career. So looking at some of the moves that the Philadelphia Eagles made throughout the offseason and the draft, they re-signed a couple of key guys, like on the defensive end, Fletcher Cox and Derek Barnett to one-year deals. So they're pretty much getting their key veterans from that Super Bowl run back for Philadelphia. Center Jason Kelce staying for one more season. Boston Scott still there, the running back. And when you look at their additions, it's actually pretty good. You got the most notable one, outside linebacker and pass rusher Hassan Reddick from the Carolina Panthers. So he's going to be really helping out Fletcher Cox and Derek Barnett in that defensive line pass rush. So that was a really good get for Philadelphia. James Bradbury from the New York Giants. Not saying he's a spectacular player, but he could maybe help out Darius Slay in the secondary. They also added Jaquaski Tart, the safety from the 49ers. So still our guy. He's a solid safety for the Philadelphia Eagles. They did manage to lose a couple of players on their end, Roddy McLeod to the Colts, but they managed to add, like I said, Jaquaski Tart. Steven Nelson went to the Houston Texans, the corner, and defensive tackle Hassan Ridgeway went to the 49ers. In the draft, the Eagles had 3 first-round picks, but I guess they want to trade most of them for more long-term draft picks. So, not a bad strategy. So, in the draft, in the end, they managed to beef up on both sides of the ball, such as getting a defensive tackle by the name of Jordan Davis from Georgia. They also got a center, just in case Jason Kelce gets injured or down the line when he retires. by the name of Cam Jurgens from Nebraska. I thought that was a solid pickup. The most notable thing that they did in that draft was trading their first and third round picks to the Tennessee Titans for receiver A.J. Brown. So Jalen Hurts has a new weapon. He has a new toy. He pretty much has two top receivers in the Eagles offense. Like Peagles. Peagles. So Devontae Smith and AJ Brown is like a two-headed attack. Like, my God. It's insane. So pretty much this whole offseason has been about how there's no more excuses for Jalen Hurts to fail in this team. Like, if Jalen Hurts cannot get anything going, he can't throw the ball, he can't make good passes or good decisions with the football, this is going to be on him. This season, if it goes to shit, I mean, if it's injuries on either side, then okay, maybe we can excuse it a little bit. But if it's Jalen Hurts performing badly or not like well, then the Eagles are going to be like scrambling for answers. They're going to be looking for like a potential out if they don't feel like Jalen Hurts is the guy in Philadelphia, because 2021 they tried it out, and then for whatever reason they shifted to a run-oriented attack. 2022, you go out and trade for AJ Brown. You have Devontae Smith still and going into his second year, and maybe he could be in potential for a breakout. You still have your tight end Dallas Goedert. You still have that three-headed running attack in Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell. So what more could you ask for other than Jalen Hurts finally delivering to his potential? Sure, second round pick. Some people are complaining about his arm strength. This is his opportunity to prove everybody wrong. So now that you have pretty much a complete offense, there's literally no excuse for Jalen Hurts to fail. So going into the season, you got some early key games against Detroit in week 1, just to see how that offense gels. And then your home opener on a Monday night against the Minnesota Vikings, against Kirk Cousins and their own new team. And then down the stretch, depending on where you're at in the season, maybe you're competing for the NFC East by that point against the Dallas Cowboys, or maybe even a surprise team like the Washington Commanders or the New York Giants. Depending where you're at, you have week 6 and 16 against the Dallas Cowboys. You have to either split or sweep that series against Dallas, because considering where they're at, how their offseason went, and how that could impact their season, this is their opportunity to strike lightning in a bottle this season and win the division. And then you got a brutal home stretch in week 12 and 13 against the Green Bay Packers, against Aaron Rodgers, and the Tennessee Titans. And sure, you're playing AJ Brown's old team, so you still have to deal with Derrick Henry and that vaunted Tennessee Titans pass rush. But those are not going to be easy games at home against those two teams that could be vying for division titles by that point. So for the Philadelphia Eagles, a lot of questions for them. I mean, how will James Bradbury help out Darius Slay in the secondary? Can he even help him out? And how much of a mentor, how much can AJ Brown elevate both Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts? How will he split the load between Devontae Smith and AJ Brown? How is Jalen Hurts going to do that? That's going to remain to be seen. So I do think that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to win the NFC East. I do think that, because they were the most improved this offseason. They went out in a pretty low risk trade on draft night. They only traded their picks from this year's draft to go get AJ Brown. And let's be honest with you, they had a lot of draft capital to give, so they didn't really give too much to get AJ Brown, and they already gave him the extension. So for the Philadelphia Eagles to succeed in 2022, they have to go as far as Jalen Hurts takes them. Can and will. I do think if Jalen Hurts does well, they're going to win maybe max. I know I'm going crazy here. 10 to 11 games. 10 or 11 games. That's what I'm thinking. They're going to win the NFC East against the Dallas Cowboys and maybe win a playoff game. I may be insane, but call me crazy because crazier things have happened, especially in this NFC East. But maybe the Philadelphia Eagles have a chance in this division. So the final team that we're going to be talking about today in our NFC East preview is, well, the team that won it the last year and the team that supposedly happens to win it every other year. And that is, of course, America's team. And, you know, that team that everyone likes to call them the accident waiting to happen, the Dallas Cowboys. How about them Cowboys? Yeehaw! So, Dallas. Jerry, what happened? What happened this offseason? So, before we even get to that point, we have to talk about 2021. They managed to actually do well in 2021. Bounce back season, 12-5. Dak Prescott, after the horrible leg injury in 2020, he had a comeback player of the year kind of year. He looked like the old quarterback that pretty much before the leg injury happened. And of course, there's that mid-season stretch where he struggled. But it was where December really got interesting for the Cowboys because despite winning the NFC East late in the season, it was where they really got inconsistent on offense. Like one week, they would destroy the Washington football team and sweep that season series. And then the next week, for example, against the Arizona Cardinals, Dak Prescott and that offense would come out flat for most of the game and then try to rally in the fourth quarter and only to come up short. And then the next week, when you're pretty much resting all the starters against Philadelphia, you go off. And then that comes back to bite you again in the wild card game against Jimmy Garbage Fail and the San Francisco 49ers. Like, Dak and the boys could not do anything against that vaunted 49ers defensive line. And even when the 49ers defensive line at times could not get to Dak Prescott, Dak Prescott had a hard time finding Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup wasn't even there, but CeeDee Lamb. He was struggling to find his receivers. Ezekiel Elliott had a hard time running the ball. So, sure, they managed to come back, but that was primarily thanks to Kyle Shanahan and his conservative approach and, well, Jimmy Garbage Fail throwing a wide open interception in the fourth quarter late in the game. It was just too little too late for the Dallas Cowboys. And Mike McCarthy made a really, really bad decision to have Dak Prescott run it down the middle of the field and then slide and then literally have no time to spike the ball or run a play in that final possession of the game. So really disappointing end for the Dallas Cowboys. So despite winning the NFC East, you lose in absolutely disappointing fashion at home against the 49ers in that wild card game. That jumpstarts their Cinderella run in the NFC playoffs. So for the Dallas Cowboys, obviously your goal is in 2022 is to repeat as NFC East champions. And of course, as who would say that phrase? Oh yeah, Stephen A. Smith. An accident waiting to happen. You don't want that to happen in 2022 again. So unfortunately, it looks like that's going to happen yet again because look what happened in free agency. You do manage to re-sign one of your key receivers in Michael Gallup, but we'll talk about what happened to him later on. They also did manage to sign defensive tackle Carlos Watkins, so a key piece to your defensive line, re-signed alongside DeMarcus Lawrence. You also managed to sign Lane Vanderish to a one-year deal, key linebacker, free safety Malik Hooker, and Dalton Schultz, the tight end, was franchise tagged. And I am hearing from reports, like what I'm seeing online, that they're in the midst of a contract dispute. So not sure if he's going to hold out or he's not going to report to training camp. We'll see what happens in the coming days. We'll see what happens. The only addition that they made was Dante Fowler from the Atlanta Falcons. So they get a piece on the defensive line. And why is that the only addition? Well, they're strapped for cash. And as a result of being strapped for cash, that money, they lost a lot of key players in the offseason. Their number 4 receiver, Cedric Wilson, and a key piece of the offensive line, the guard, Connor Williams, they both went to South Beach, Miami. They went to the Dolphins to go play for Tua. Yikes. 2 key pieces immediately gone when free agency started. And then an even bigger hit was tackle Lyle Collins. Went to the Cincinnati Bengals to go protect Joe Burrow. Randy Gregory originally was going to stay with the Dallas Cowboys, to beef up that pass rush. But no, he changed his mind. He was like, no, fuck America's team. I'm going to go play with Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos. Be the successor to Von Miller. God damn. And then the hits keep on hitting. Keanu Neal, the linebacker, went to the Tampa Bay Bucks to go play with Tom Brady in that defense. And then, for whatever reason, they traded away Amari Cooper, their top receiver, to the Cleveland Browns, the skid marks, in a trade for just a measly 5th round and 6th round pick. Like, what was Jerry Jones doing? Like, maybe Amari Cooper was expensive. Maybe the contract was going to be too much. But you don't trade your number 1 receiver when you don't know what's going to happen with your current receiver core. You have questions about CeeDee Lamb. You have, like, Michael Gallup. I'm going to say it now. He's still going to be recovering from that ACL tear he suffered late in the season. So I don't understand why Jerry Jones did this. He is so stupid. So in going to the draft, they managed to find Lyle Collins' replacement with Tyler Smith. He's going to be playing, I think he's going to be playing left tackle because Tyron Smith is going to be replacing, he's going to be playing Tyron Smith's going to be playing left tackle while Tyler Smith is going to be playing guard. I'm not exactly sure what Zach Martin, their only last remaining good player on the Cowboys offensive line, is going to be doing. Maybe he's going to be transitioning to right guard. And then they also got a Alabama wide receiver by the name of Jalen Tolbert. So overall, oh man, this was a bad offseason for Dallas. This was very bad. I said it before in my season recap of the Dallas Cowboys for 2021, and I'm going to say it here again when I preview them for 2022. Their best chance to make a Super Bowl run was literally last year. Yes, we can make fun of the Dallas Cowboys all we want. They literally had a chance to do it. They literally had a chance to make this run. Yes, in spite of the mid-season stupidity, the mid-season funk that they were in, and even the late season funk that they were in. They literally had the roster. They literally, if they didn't get their head out in their own booty, they literally had a chance to go get this run. Finally get out of this mediocrity. Finally shove it in the face of everybody. That, we finally won a Super Bowl. In the last 30 years, we could take this and shove it, Stephen A. Smith. But no, they didn't do that. And as a result, it cost them in the offseason with key losses in the offensive line. They lose Cedric Wilson. They also stupidly traded Amari Cooper when he was a key part of the offense. And like I said, you have questions about CeeDee Lamb. He's probably going to continue to break out, but he can't do it alone. Michael Gallup still going to be recovering from the ACL tear. And Dalton Schultz, yes, solid tight end. But is he going to be present week 1? Because he's still under the franchise tag. And from what I read on Bleacher Report or ESPN, it looks like he's not interested in playing under the franchise tag. So CeeDee Lamb can't do it on his own. He's not going to be able to do it on his own. So for the Dallas Cowboys, going into 2022, you gotta keep an eye on how much of an impact all these losses on the offensive line and in the receiver, at least for the time being, on the receiver end, but mainly on the offensive line, how much of an impact they're going to have on Dak and this offense, because that offensive line for Dallas for like a good portion of Dak's career has been pretty well. It has been pretty well. Now Dak's gonna find out like what playing behind a shitty or maybe even like bad offensive line is gonna be like. Now, for Dallas, some of their key games going to 2022 is pretty much the first 6 weeks of the season. And yes, that even includes their division rivals who face their own uncertainty. You play the first 2 weeks, the Tampa Bay Bucks, a rematch of week 1 of last year. You play the defending AFC champion, the Cincinnati Bengals, both at home, mind you, both at home. Then you go play the Washington Commanders. You go play the New York Giants. You go play the LA Rams, the defending Super Bowl champions, and the Philadelphia Eagles. At least a good chunk of these are on the road. Bucks, Bengals. I think Commanders are on the Commanders is at home, and then on the road is the Giants, the Rams, and the Eagles. Rough stretch, very very rough stretch, especially if the Giants, Commanders, and the Eagles get off to a really hot start too. So for Dallas, it was a very bad offseason. Now they could bounce back and pretend that it never happened, depending on how they play, how they gel together during training camp and in the preseason. But I think it could come back to bite them. That offseason could come back to bite them in 2022. And especially those first 6 games, that big slate, it's going to be pretty brutal. Now, again, nothing is certain in the NFC East, but for the Dallas Cowboys and America's team, I think there's going to be an accident waiting to happen again in 2022. And with that is a wrap of this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. What did you guys think about this episode and my discussion on the NFC East in 2022? Let me know how you feel about it, however you can. And what are you guys' thoughts? Like, how are each team going to do going into this coming NFL season? Dallas Cowboys, Washington Commanders, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the New York Giants. And like I said, personally, I believe the Philadelphia Eagles are going to win this division based on how their offseason is. But again, anything can change in the NFC East. And there could certainly be an accident waiting to happen. So, with that in mind, we are at the halfway point of our NFL 2022 season previews. We've covered the entirety of the NFC by this point. And going forward in the second half, we're going to be covering the AFC North, the South, the East, the West, you name it. Going from this point onward, it's all about the AFC. We've done the NFC side of things. The rest of the month is all about the AFC. So get ready to gear up for that. And like I said, in case you missed anything with the NFL season previews, go and check out the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast. And for a specific team that you're looking for, check out the YouTube channel. But that is it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. I am your host, DylanLasagna. Thank you for tuning in to episode number 108 of this icy yet spicy podcast filled with the most filthy casual takes on the world of pro wrestling and sports. Make sure to listen to me wherever you get your podcast and follow the show on social media on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. And as always, keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge with those filthy casual takes on the world of pro wrestling and sports. And until next time, peace out.